Acton. I worked at a local independent living center in California and actually was part of the initial group to set up these disaster coalition meetings. So it's so great to be here in this role and to join you and to see that this important work continues. My name is Anna Acton. I'm the Deputy Director in the Independent Living and Community Access Division at the Department of Rehabilitation. We do multiple functions within my division, but we work with the 28 independent living centers in the state. We have 12 traumatic brain injury program sites. We also work on the statewide assistive technology program in collaboration with the California Foundation for Independent Living Centers. And we do a lot around community living for people with disabilities. My role around disasters here at the department is kind of twofold, really. One is that I work very closely on our continuity of operation plan for the State Department of Rehabilitation. We have 80 some offices in the state, and we need to ensure if a disaster hits and happens in any part of the state that we continue our operations, and we have very comprehensive plans for them. But secondly, my role is really kind of an external facing partner with other state departments. That includes all of the state departments under the California Health and Human Services Agency, working very closely with Vance Taylor at Cal OES, and other departments around ensuring the needs of people with disabilities are being met, especially those with access and functional needs when a disaster happens. On the state level, there's a lot of work that goes into every disaster, whether there's a heat wave, or there is a hurricane coming, or a tropical storm, or wildfires, or COVID. There's a lot that we do on the state level to help support our local response. And so that's my role, and I will pass it over to the next. Is that you, Vance, or Noah? I apologize.
Go ahead, Noah.
Okay. Thank you, June, and thank you, Anna. Noah Ryder. Again, as Naya introduced, I head up customer success for a company called Rave Mobile Safety, and we're now actually a part of Motorola Solutions, which is probably a bit more familiar to folks. I'm also very happy, excited, and honored to have been invited to participate in today's panel. And I think you'll hear more throughout today's discussion what our role is, but essentially we're the technology partner for Cal OES and for the state of California to provide early and advanced notification and warning to communities and individuals across the state of California. And we're very excited to share additional capabilities that the state is leveraging Rave technology to provide. And we believe it will be of particular interest to individuals with health conditions or access and functional needs, to allow for both emergency managers to have slightly better situational awareness about the needs in their individual communities, and also the ability to provide more timely warning for individuals who might require a little bit of additional time to respond to whatever Mother Nature or other entities might throw our way. You know, Anna mentioned a hurricane. I can't imagine folks in California think all that often about a hurricane, but obviously you had to just a couple of months ago. So we're really excited, or I'm really excited to participate today and share the ways in which technology coupled with policy and practice can truly increase and strengthen resilience around disaster preparedness. So thank you again for the invitation to join today, June.
All right. I think that brings us to the bottom of the batting order. So, hey, everybody, I'm Vance Taylor, and I'm the Chief of the Office of Access and Functional Needs at the California Governor's Office of Emergency Services. And we just go by Cal OES. I'll give the interpreters a second to switch. All right, excellent. So I have a really wonderful opportunity to serve as chief, and I get to implement a two-part mission. One is to help identify what are the needs that all Californians have before, during, and after disaster. In California, we recognize that individuals with access and functional needs are disproportionately impacted by disasters. We know that they're hit first, they're hit the hardest, and that there's an increased level, not just of human suffering, but of loss of life. And because of that, the governor leaned forward and created the Office of Access and Functional Needs. And it's the only office of its type in the entire country. Because as chief, I serve as a senior level executive appointed directly by the governor, tasked with implementing this two-part mission. The first part, which I mentioned already, is to identify what are the needs all Californians have before, during, and after disasters. But the second part is, I think, what really sets us apart, which is once those needs get identified, to work with partners in emergency management and partners throughout the whole community to actually integrate those needs throughout the way we plan, prepare, respond, and recover. And so it's a real privilege to be able to serve in that way. You can't see from the Zoom, I use a power wheelchair. And so for me, this is not just something that I'm professionally passionate about, but because of my lived experience, it's something that I'm personally passionate about as well.
Well, thanks to the three of you for the intro. I forgot to say to our participants, please, if you're able, introduce yourself in chat, just your name, your organization, your position, and your location. That would be your town or city and state. So thanks for that. So our first question is, I think we'll start with the bottom of the batting order. So that would be Vance, that would be first, and then Noah. What does alert and warning, what is it? Why does it matter? And what role do you play in it? Over to you, Vance.
Thanks, Jen. It's a great question, and I appreciate that. But the fact is that information is the difference between somebody's ability to maintain their safety, their security, their independence. It's a difference between living and dying. It's a difference between maintaining your dignity or not. When a disaster happens, or a disaster is about to happen, right? So some disasters are non-notice events, like an earthquake. We don't really get advanced warning. Others, like a tropical storm, sometimes a wildfire, we have more of a heads up. But we have to be able to share with people what's coming, how to prepare, and what actions they should take in order to protect themselves, right? And sometimes that action is going to vary. Sometimes it's going to be, hey, you need to stay home. You need to shelter in place to make it through whatever event's happening. And other times, it's, you gotta go. But you gotta evacuate, you gotta get out. And we know that especially during times of emergency evacuation, the reality is that it typically takes individuals with access and functional needs more time to leave. So, for example, if an emergency evacuation order comes through, a wildfire is coming and you gotta leave right now. It may be that you have to call a care attendant, wait for them to arrive, pack up your durable medical equipment, collect your assisted devices, wait for an accessible transportation resource to come pick you up, and then you can evacuate. Well, all of that takes time. Whereas maybe your neighbor gets the emergency evacuation order and they throw a bag in the trunk of their car and they take off. So when minutes matter, the ability to get information as quickly as possible is the ultimate priority. And that's exactly what we're talking about when we speak of alert, warning, and notification. It's the ability to put that information in front of you, whether it's on a TV screen, on a social media platform, on your handheld device, or through any other means, form, or fashion, that it can be communicated instantaneously. And that not only is the information going to come through, but it's going to come through in an accessible format. It's going to come through using wording that means something to you. It's going to come through in a way that's actionable. So it's something that we have done, but we haven't done as well as we could or should. And recently we've taken steps to improve. And that's why we're here. And that's what we're going to talk about.
Noah, anything there?
Yes, this is Noah again. I would add a few things and maybe not add, but perhaps summarize a bit, because obviously, you know, personally, I'm extremely well aligned with Vance and his vision and his mission and his role that he serves for the state of California, and quite frankly, even broader, as evidenced by his being leveraged as a subject matter expert in forums such as this one. You know, I think it's really about getting the right information to the right people at the right time, right? That's what it all boils down to. And I think Vance touched on all of that in his previous remarks. But the right time and the right audience or the right people at the right time could be different depending on what an individual's particular circumstances or needs might be. And, you know, it certainly is as passionate as I'm sure everybody who's represented here today is about, you know, their role in whether we're calling it whole community preparedness or inclusive emergency preparedness. We are too at Rave and Motorola. And as the technology partner and provider, it's just one way that we can help enable our customers, quite frankly, to be their best in the moments that matter. So, you know, as you know, there's a no notice or with notice disaster or emergency, providing the tools and the capabilities to be able to provide the right information to the right people at the right time. And, you know, another thing that I certainly focus on, and certainly others at Rave and Motorola focus on, is our responsibility to our customers. We're constantly listening and taking counsel from subject matter experts around whether it's access and functional needs, inclusive preparedness, or other things completely unrelated to the topic of the day, we're constantly ingesting that information, that counsel, that advice to try to make the best technological solutions available to our customers, who are the practitioners that ultimately make the difference between life and death. So we take that role very seriously. We're proud of our partnership with the state of California and others, and just to be able to contribute in the ways that we do to the folks that do the really important work is very meaningful for us.
Okay, so Vance, give us an overview of California's approach to funding alerts and warnings for its, how many counties? Like 58? And
58.
58, and its cities and 911 and the tribal nations, as well as the array of higher education institutions.
So, Jim, with 58 different counties, there's 58 different ways of doing things.
Mhm.
And sometimes different counties take different approaches to the way that they provide emergency alert, warning, and notification. And that can be everything from the threshold that they use to issue an alert, all the way to what vendor are they using to send alerts. And the reality is that some are more effective than others. So the long and short of it is that at Cal OES, we believe this issue is so important that we actually purchased the capability to provide every single county in the state with the capability to do effective and efficient alerting. Now, what we've not done is told every county, you have to use our solution. If a county wants to continue to pay to use a different solution, they can do that. Now, we've provided guidelines that say these are best practices for how you do an emergency alert, warning, and notification. But again, they're free to use whatever vendor, platform, or solution they want. But there isn't a county in the state that can say, well, we don't have an efficient platform because we can't afford it. Because Cal OES has made this available to every county in the state, essentially for free. So it's our hope that counties say, hey, not only is it a great solution, but why would I be paying money for something I could be getting for free? And as more and more come on board, we make sure that that capability and capacity is basically set at a gold standard for all 58 counties.
Noah, comment?
I don't know that I have much to add other than certainly to acknowledge that I want to be extremely transparent here and not suggest that RAVE is the partner of all 58 counties and hundreds of cities that have access to it. But Cal OES, as Vance mentioned, has provided funding for this platform should cities, counties, tribes, publicly funded institutes of higher education in the state of California, should they choose to take advantage of it. We're here to partner with them and support them. And thus far, many have made that decision. Making a decision to switch from one technology to another isn't something that entities, emergency management agencies take lightly. There are lots of considerations and implications. So certainly our role as Cal OES's partner is to be available to whoever should decide to make that switch over to us.
Do you have current count on the groups that the counties have made that commitment or have already switched?
It would take me a moment, which I wouldn't want to bore everybody by staring at a blank screen or listening to silence.
Okay,
But I can share with you high level numbers. I'm just looking at my other screen here. We have close to 60 entities across the state who are live, operational, using the state provided platform for alert and warning as their primary system. To be clear, that includes local jurisdictions such as cities, as well as counties and higher education institutes and tribes. Quite frankly, the tribes have really taken advantage of this offer. Many of them previously did not have access to an alert and warning system. So to re-emphasize or reinforce a point that Vance made just a moment ago, the state truly has leveled the playing field for entities that have a responsibility for early warning and emergency preparedness. But in addition to the 60 that are using us as their primary system, there are another 90 that have expressed interest and have actually started implementing the system. So we're bumping up against 200 entities in the state that are taking advantage of what the state has funded. And actually, there's at least one that I've seen on chat here today that actually isn't necessarily using the state funded, but they are on our platform, and that's the County of Sacramento.
thanks, Noah. All right, next question. Recently, CalOS has added capabilities for emergency management agencies to better address the needs of, people with disabilities and others with access and functional needs or functional considerations. Vance, I think you've been referring to this quote, enhanced alerting, unquote. What is that? And what is that, some kind of new capability? What is it?
Yeah, we're doing it better. It's enhanced. Yeah, thanks, June. So enhanced alerting, and that's a term I think as a community and frankly throughout the state, we're just going to see and hear more and more. But it's really rooted in the recognition, again, that it's individuals with disabilities and access or functional needs who are disproportionately impacted by disasters. So what enhanced alerting allows is to take this capability of pushing out messages and actually become much more tailored in the way that we do that. So we can actually lower the threshold for providing advanced warning to individuals throughout the whole community to make sure that they've got as much time as possible to take the appropriate action needed to be safe. So it allows individuals to pre-identify what their particular circumstance, consideration, or need might be in a form and fashion that creates the ability to provide them with customized messaging. So that gives ultimately a better pathway for emergency managers to push out preparedness information. It provides a better pathway to empower the community to be better prepared. And it creates a better pathway to ensure that individuals with access or functional considerations are really able to have the time necessary to take appropriate steps for life safety considerations. The other thing it does is it ensures that emergency management officials are better informed and at least have a better sense of the types of needs that they need to be prepared to address before, during, and after disasters. So I promise that we'll get a bit more into the specifics, but just conceptually, that's what we're talking about when we say enhanced alerting.
Hmm. Noah?
Sure, I think I will, each time I unmute myself, preface it by saying I probably don't have a lot to add, because Vance obviously covers these topics so thoroughly.
I'm gonna
But
start taking a dive. No, I'll start answering.
put me on the spot. Wonderful. Vance doesn't belong at the bottom of any batting order, by the way. But I think I'll just tie it back to, if we recognize, as emergency preparedness professionals and those with these types of responsibilities, if we believe that there's a need to provide, better information in a more timely way to the right people, that I think warrants the ability to somehow gather information that can provide better tailored, better targeted, more timely messaging for folks that, as Vance mentioned earlier, might require additional time. So, that's from our perspective where technology can help fill some of the gaps or close some of those loops to allow folks with those responsibilities to be able to do things just a little bit better in a more tailored, targeted fashion, rather than a single message to the entire community that might not be as helpful to some residents as to the broader public.
Okay. So I think I'll change the batting order rules here. So Vance, you're gonna be up first. Noah and Anna, if you have something to add, just pipe in, okay? And Vance and Noah, not to answer now, but I want you both to come back to later, giving us some actual examples of what the content might be of an enhanced alert, and give us some examples down the road. Then not this second, but think about that. So next question. So how does this enhanced alerting differ from traditional access and functional needs registries?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked.
How could I resist?
So let me just say this. The official guidance of Cal OES regarding AFN registries is don't create an AFN registry. Okay, because what we have found is that they don't work. And they don't work for really a few key reasons. First and foremost, they tend to overcommit resources. They tend to overpromise, right? So you've heard in communities where they've tried to use these, emergency management says, hey, June, tell me your name, tell me your info, and basically we're gonna come get you, right? If there's an event, if there's a disaster, but we've got your info, so we got you. Well, that's just not realistic. It's not realistic to think that resources are going to be automatically deployed in a really speedy form and fashion to everybody that signs up for a registry. So it's not fair, it's not responsible to overpromise. Another issue with registries has been that because emergency managers are overpromising, the community is lacking in preparedness, right? There's this false sense of confidence. Like, okay, well, I'm down. I signed up for a registry, so I don't need to do anything else to prepare. When the reality is you have to plan it so no one's coming for you. And so that's created a real gap. The other things that have been really challenging about registries is that they become outdated really quick. Right? I changed my phone number, I changed my address. I never go into update whatever was in the registry. And so as soon as that happens, the registry data becomes kind of obsolete, inaccurate, and not very usable. And then one of the other problems has been, okay, look, let's say you get great information in there. How do you secure it? Right? How do you ensure that this list of people with access and functional needs isn't going to get into the wrong hands? So for those reasons, and probably others, as I said, the guidance from Cal OES has been, we don't recommend communities move forward with traditional AFN registries. So when we're talking about enhanced alerting, I think it's easiest if I start by telling you what it isn't. Okay, it's not a commitment that government's going to provide resources or meet individual or community needs during disasters. Okay, but when you provide your information for enhanced alerting, nobody's promising you anything. It's important to understand that. It's not a substitute for personal preparedness. And it's also, I think, not a replacement for emergency managers to think, oh, well, we've got our bases covered because we've got this tool. Okay, so it's not those three things. Now let me tell you what it is. First, it's a tool that's been developed in collaboration with community partners. Right? So this isn't, hey, emergency managers are planning for you, but not with you. There's been a lot of collaboration on this. It's a mechanism to provide the community with alerts earlier in the notification process. Right? So it's a way to get you information sooner. It is a system that we can use to push a variety of preparedness materials, key resources, and emergency information. And you might get that in advance of a disaster, right, to prepare for that event. Or you might get it during blue sky days as a way of saying, hey, here's how you can get ready for future events. It's a secure, free option to provide better situational awareness. And it's available to all Californians within and outside of the community in any jurisdiction that chooses to adopt this approach. So it's, I think, important for people to understand what it isn't and what it is. It is absolutely not a traditional AFN registry. Okay, I cannot stress that enough. Noah, I don't know if you want to chime in as well, but
Sure. I think I would be remiss if I didn't admit that when Rave initially developed this particular product called Rave Prepare 10, 11 years ago, that we didn't develop it as an access and functional needs registry. We absolutely did. But I think we've become better educated through our engagement with our partners, with the community, and with customers of ours to recognize the inherent issues, not with just nomenclature or calling something a registry, but what the detractors of a registry are, which I think we are much better educated at the moment on, through our partners, such as Anna, June, Vance, and many others, not just in California, but, even more broadly. So we have evolved our thought process as well, and hopefully done so in a way that makes individual community members and residents and organizations more comfortable with participating in this, because unfortunately there is no escaping the fact that individuals with access and functional needs, health conditions, advanced age are disproportionately impacted by disasters. And this is not the only way that we can mitigate that loss of life or impact, but it's one way that we can help, again, support emergency managers fulfill their mission in protecting as many lives and property as possible.
Okay, so Vance, this is June, you talked about, emergency managers not seeing this as, one and done in terms of responsibilities for planning for people with disabilities and others with access and functional considerations. So what efforts have you taken to ensure that these local emergency managers recognize, not only some of the benefits that you've listed, but some of the limitations of enhanced learning in terms of their own planning, response, and recovery issues?
Yeah, let me give you an example, and I'll wait for the interpreters to swap out. Okay. Yeah, so let me give you just one example here, June. So, and look, in emergency management, what you've got are good people trying to do good things, right? They're really well-intentioned individuals. I mean, my colleagues run towards danger because they want to help people. Where I think it becomes challenging sometimes is that you have a lot of emergency managers who are former first responders, former law enforcement, military, people who don't typically have lived experience with an access or a functional need. And so they kind of don't know what they don't know. I always tell people I use a power wheelchair, and I have for most of my life. And because of that, anytime I enter a room, whether it's a birthday party or work, I'm looking for access, right? Are there stairs? Is there a ramp, an elevator? Are things impeding my path of travel? But if you walk, jump, run, or skip into that same room with me, chances are you're not looking for the same things I am. And it's okay, right? It's not that one is good and the other is bad. it's that because we each have a different lived experience, we can look at the same thing and see it differently. So what we've worked hard to do and what we're specifically trying to do right now when it comes to enhanced alerting is help emergency managers see what they didn't see by bringing the whole community perspective to this issue and educating emergency managers about the needs of a community. It helps them get a better understanding for what this is and what it isn't. So emergency managers used to look at traditional AFN registries, and they would say, well, 12 people signed up and said they needed emergency evacuation assistance in the form of, let's say, an accessible van. So it'd say, great, we've got access to 12 accessible vans, so we're done. We've now met the AFN needs of our community. What we're working to do now is say, through enhanced alerting, yes, you're going to get an idea of what types of resources or needs your community has. And that might include things like, I need accessible transportation, right? But you have to understand that's not 100% of the needs your community has. It's a sense of the needs. It's the pulse of the community, if you will. And so we're teaching emergency managers through webinars, live meetings, ongoing discussions, that you can't use enhanced alerting to say, we now definitively know the needs of our community. What you can do is use enhanced alerting to say, oh, these are the types of needs that we have to plan for. And then work in close partnership with the community through organizations like independent living centers, regional centers, other CBOs, to then unpack that and find out what the unique needs are. And then in collaboration, build to meet that capacity. So it's a starting point. And that's, really a sort of an aha moment for a lot of emergency managers. They thought they understood it one way. We're helping them realize that they need to see it differently.
Okay, so starting point. So Vance, I think you kind of answered this, but will every jurisdiction in California be leveraging this enhanced alerting? I think you kind of answered that, but anything you want to add?
So what we're doing is we're making it available to every jurisdiction. It'll be really interesting because I think that the enhanced alerting piece of the overall alerting capability makes it much more attractive for jurisdictions, right? They're recognizing, hey, we get more by adopting this than we do by going with some other means. The enhanced alerting piece is really new. Like the ink is still drying, new. And so what we're seeing right now is a lot of interest and a lot of people on the emergency management side wanting to engage. What I would expect is that if Noah were to give you the exact number of jurisdictions that are using this today, and then wait and give you another set of numbers, let's say January 15th, that you would see a pretty good uptick.
Yeah.
So I think that's positive.
Can I ask you, and you've been very clear with us, there are 58 counties in California, but because this is a product that is also being made available to cities, 911, tribes, and the array of higher education institutions out there, what's the end? What's the number we're talking about here? Because it's way above 58 counties. So are we talking 300 entities, 400? And
This is Noah. I can jump in. The answer is nobody knows exactly, because there's also some overlap between these entities, right? So the number that we've been provided by Cal OES as the N, or the possible universe, is upwards of 700, somewhere between 700 and 800 entities that are covered under this state provided platform. I also think it's worth being clear that the enhanced alerting capability, where individuals can provide some additional information about themselves and alerting authorities can leverage that information to provide, again, earlier warning, better, clearer instructions for people with specific considerations. That capability is not available to an institute of higher education, for example. It's really limited to the public sector emergency management crowd. So even a 911 center that is a covered entity or eligible for this sort of state platform for alert and warning, unless that 911 center also has a responsibility to send out mass notifications for disaster purposes, this is probably also an entity that we would be asked to not sort of unlock this additional capability for. This is really a specific use case, and acknowledging and recognizing, historical sensitivity around these types of platforms. We want to ensure that it's only being provided to those entities that have a true need for it and understand its capabilities and limitations, as you asked about just a moment ago, June.
so Noah, that possible universe, besides the 58 counties, are we talking 200, 100, and any idea?
That would be, or that would have access to this enhanced alerting capability.
Yes.
I would be guessing, but I would say broad brushstrokes, 1/2 to 2/3 of that number. There are 430 or so 911 centers across the state of California. Most of those, I don't think, would have need or interest in this particular capability of the state platform, but they certainly have interest in being able to send out internal notifications and communications for response purposes. So yeah, if I were guessing, let's call it 1/2 of that 700 number would represent the 58 counties plus, cities that might want to leverage it.
Okay. So Anna, so I hear you say something?
Yeah, a couple things. One is, I mean, the situational awareness piece, Vance has already talked about it, and Noah, but alerting system is so key to the situational awareness, right? As a person with a disability myself, being aware, being the first to know is literally could be life or death, not to over exaggerate, but literally, right? That's what we see in major disasters. So that we're the first to know, and we have a plan, and we're able to execute as quickly as possible, especially for those of us who may need assistance, and have kind of additional considerations when evacuating and keeping ourselves safe. So that's where these alerting pieces become so critical. Now, remember, I don't know if all the jurisdictions in California have alerting. I wanted to assume yes, but I know with many of the counties that I've worked with and cities, they have alerting systems, right? You see the code red or the nixles or whatever they're called. There's multitude of ones being used. And, these are the things that the local jurisdictions are really using to drive out information. If there's a disaster, a stay in place order, a evacuation order, a warning, right? And these become so critical. Now, there's so many considerations, right, for the counties or jurisdictions on this of, what device, what system they're going to use, right? They're locked into contracts at times, right? I'm just trying to give you a little awareness, I think, on what I understand the local jurisdictions looking at. There's considerations. They're locked into contract with maybe their alerting system. Maybe there's technology, broadband access issues. There are things that counties, jurisdictions are going to think are going to work better than others. And so these are all the things being worked out at the local level. And this becomes a new tool, right? That Cal OES has kind of set forth and said, here's a tool that works really well for notifications. It does have this advanced feature for certain populations for early notifications, but really pushing the local communities to think about whole community planning, response, and recovery, like we always talk about, but also in the context of with alerting, right? How do you get those messages out in a way that's early, provides the right information? And then for those that do need additional considerations, here's a tool, right, that's going to be able to help with some of that. But a lot of this can be done at the local level just through whole community planning and notifications and alerting. The other piece that I wanted to mention is that, it's really good to have these conversations at the local level with your county, right? Like, what are they working on? What are the considerations? What are the concerns? When are their contracts up for their alerting systems, to really engage with them of what the disability community or broader access and functional needs community needs in an alerting system, right? And how can it be used to help save lives and prepare people? So those are the things that I would just highly encourage thinking about connecting at the local level on these. Are they aware of the RAVE platform? Are they aware that the Cal OES is making this available? And to the point, I know we're talking about advanced alerting, but part of the platform is a smart 911. And if you haven't seen that, I highly encourage you to go and check it out. It is super interesting. It takes kind of the 911 system to this whole new level where, the 911 operator, if you choose as an individual to put information in there, I don't care if you have a disability or you don't, maybe you have a huge gas storage tank, a locked gate, whatever the case is for your circumstance, you put it in there. So when the first responders respond, they understand what they're going into and what the considerations are there. So just really highly encourage you to look at that platform. I see Sacramento's on here. You guys have rolled this out already. I've looked at it. Very, very great stuff happening there. So sorry, I just wanted to add that in while I had a chance, June.
Great. Thanks, Hannah. So the next question is two questions in one. So Anna mentioned Smart 911. And so this two-part question, first of all, is this just a pilot program you're doing in California, or you've committed to long-term funding for what you're describing? And then to Anna's point, how does this enhance the learning integrate with Smart 911? Like, what is Smart 911? How does that fit into the discussion? So 2 questions in one. Vance?
I'm happy to tackle the first part, and know if you want to tackle the second. Yes, this is something California's committed to. This isn't something we're gonna roll out in 1 year and then pull the rug out from under people in the second year. This is very much an essential part of what we do. And we're committed to this mission. So I just want to make that clear. Noah, if you could speak to the Smart 911 piece, that'd be great.
Absolutely. So just to quickly piggyback on the funding, the alert and warning system that Cal OES has funded, now including this enhanced alerting capability, is a component of a much larger contract that the state has funded long-term. And that contract provides the infrastructure for next generation 911 across the state. So the contract that Cal OES maintains, and by the way, it's not held by us, it's held by another organization that we're a subcontractor to. But the funding for alert and warning is quote unquote indefinite through the state tariff process. So just to support what Vance is saying here, there is a long-term commitment. It is part of this delivery of next generation 911 calls.
So Noah, I need to just interrupt you
Sure.
for 1 minute. Just put in plain language the tariff process, because that's jargon. So
Sure.
what is that?
And I won't pretend to be an expert here, but no funding mechanism could probably ever be described as in perpetuity, but this is about as close a thing as it could be. So, funding mechanisms through surcharges on consumer telephones, wireless devices, and things like that. So it is a bit of a self-funding mechanism, and the tariff process, the funding mechanism, it even outlives the expiration of any contractual agreement that Cal OES has with its vendors. So this truly is a long-term initiative that the state has embarked on.
So I will help you by saying to the audience, those are all those strange little line items you see at the bottom of some of your telephone or cell phone bills. So sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, thank you for the additional clarification. So if we segue to the question about Smart 911 and what is it and how is it integrated with enhanced alerting, and I think Jim House, you made a remark in the comments, which is true. So Smart 911 is not available operational in every jurisdiction in California. However, in a different contract that Cal OES holds with Rave, Smart 911 is also funded for any 911 center that chooses to take advantage of it. So these two things really do come together in the following way. When a California resident, actually don't even need to be a California resident, subscribes to either Smart 911 or they see their local jurisdiction advertising or promoting the availability of emergency notifications by their own agency, when that individual subscribes, and again, we're assuming here that that local jurisdiction is using the state provided alert and warning system through Rave Mobile Safety, when that individual subscribes to receive alerts, they also have the option to share information about themselves or other members of their household should they need to dial 911, and should their call be answered by a 911 center that is also taking advantage of this state-funded Smart 911 system. So if I describe it a little bit differently, on the alert and warning side, the information that an individual resident is voluntarily providing, as much or as little information as they would want emergency managers to have access to, that information is available for preparedness, for situational awareness, for enhanced, more timely, more effective early warnings, right? That's sort of outbound from emergency management to the public. Smart 911 is almost the opposite. It's inbound information that becomes available only during the length of a 911 call, should that individual have also selected that option when subscribing. Smart 911 is also a national database. So I used to live in California up until last summer. I live in Colorado now, but I have a Smart 911 profile. If I'm on business in California or visiting Disney, two things that I'm planning to do in the next 6 months, and I need to dial 911 in California, my profile will also pop up to a 911 center that receives my call if they are using Smart 911. So the information, let's call it, travels with the subscriber, so long as they share their mobile number as part of their profile in the system. The other point that I just want to mention is that because this is a national database, as more and more California jurisdictions take advantage of what Cal OES has funded, it creates this stronger network across the state from an alert and warning perspective in the following way. I might reside in San Diego County, but I might commute to Orange County to my place of employment, or I might go to school in Los Angeles County. As part of the subscription process, you have the ability to enter as many addresses as are associated with you or other members of your household. And based on those addresses, our technology is able to surface or provide you with the option to subscribe to one or many of alert and warnings across jurisdictional boundaries. So from a resident's perspective, we don't really think much about, oh, at this very moment, I'm in the city of San Diego versus Encinitas. Oh, now I'm up in Orange County or Oceanside. Residents, individuals don't think of jurisdictional boundaries quite in the way that emergency managers and public safety officials do. So as this program rolls out further across the state, it really does create a more comprehensive way for emergency managers to engage with not only their residents, but folks who commute into their jurisdiction on a daily basis or potentially go to school in their jurisdiction. It really becomes a much more holistic platform.
Thanks, Noah. This June, I would add, I've been a subscriber for years because the product's been around for years. And although LA County doesn't offer it, or the city of LA, the neighboring cities I commute to do, like Culver City or Washington, D.C. So it does travel with me. The other thing I just wanted to make clear that you alluded to was this is not a disability registry kind of thing. This is a mainstream product for anybody who wants to make some of their information known to responders. So thanks for that. And so back to our last questions. Again, we've got a question in chat. I'd like Noah and Rance to glance at 11:01. Steve asked the question about accessibility to people who are deaf and hard of hearing. So please integrate that answer into your next group of answers. So next question, how can we, Californians anyways, subscribe to receive alerts from our local jurisdiction and provide additional information for the enhanced alerting component? How do we do that?
This is Noah. I can take an initial stab at that. I think the best general answer is go to your city or county's website if you're able to and determine their opt-in process, because as we've already acknowledged a couple of times during today's session, the state provided rave system is not available yet in every single jurisdiction. So I wouldn't necessarily tell you to only go here and assume that your local jurisdiction uses our platform. So I would start by visiting your own city or county website. Generally speaking, cities and counties promote their alert and warning system on their homepage. If not, they typically have a search bar where you could just type in alerts and it should take you there. And from there, you would just click through the link to subscribe. In the case of Rave, we actually partner with our customer jurisdictions in the same way, and we provide them with a unique registration website or landing page that we encourage them to link off of their own city or county page. So I think the best first stop is always go to your city or county website and determine their subscription or sign up process. If we're talking about Smart 911, I put a link into chat, california.smart911.com. It provides a bit of additional background on the services that we've been discussing today. We also have a smartphone app available for iOS, iPhone, or Android, and it's called Smart 911. So simply by downloading the Smart 911 app, you are creating a profile, you are subscribing, and then as soon as you enter one or more physical addresses, we're then able to provide a more tailored experience. Oh, you live in San Mateo County, they use Rave Alert. Do you want to receive alerts from the county of San Mateo? Yes, and here are the types of alerts I want to receive. So, I think city, county website, download Smart 911. Frankly, I think that's a good idea regardless of what your home jurisdiction is using for alerts, because you might find yourself elsewhere in the country needing to dial 911, and that will help first responders.
Okay. Anna, want to make sure you've got time for any additional comments?
No, but there's a few things, but there was a question in the chat about emergency alerts, accessibility for those who are deaf or hard of hearing or deafblind. Do you, Vance or Noah, want to speak to that at all? I think it's a good question, right? And they're talking, maybe we can talk about the way the alerting happens and in the various formats, and if there's any ASL opportunities.
Sure, I can cover it. Maybe this is Noah first from the technology, and then Vance, if maybe you want to piggyback and talk about best practices. So the platform itself, Rave Alert, has the ability to deliver messages by SMS, text, email, voice, cross-posting to official social media accounts, delivering messages to jurisdiction-owned websites for emergency banners on those pages, as well as to other systems that counties can link or cities can link into. Obviously, the most challenging scenario is the deaf-blind population. We do not have a native technology in the system that would translate an alert into American Sign Language, for example. However, our customers have the ability to embed hyperlinks into either text messages or emails that could then link to additional content that could be hosted either on their own website or even on a Rave website. So integrated in the sense that message would be received, hyperlinked to potentially a video with ASL translation.
Hey, Vance, anything they had?
Yeah, I think Noah hit the nail on the head. So that's obviously a capability that we want. But it's also something that we push out. Again, recognizing not everybody's going to use our platform. We've got alert warning guidelines that are issued through the state. The first one was done, I think, in either 17 or 19. And we've got a revised set that's being approved, I think maybe this week or last week. And we talk a lot about that, right? Recognizing that people receive information different ways. And if people are going to use their own platform, we want to make sure that those platforms address the different accessibility related needs that they have. And that if the platform itself cannot do so, that the jurisdiction partner up with the vendors and partners that can tie that capability into their messaging.
Okay,
Thank you. And so, this is a work in progress, right? The accessibility, and it takes people like Stephen, really appreciate your input on this, right? Because it's the kind of input that helps us in our work ensure that we are making these initiatives universally designed and accessible and usable, right, by the broadest number of individuals. So, I think what I'd like to add is just, a reminder on how important this work is and how important it is for all of you, right, to be working with your constituents, with your consumers, and with your local disaster services providers to have these conversations, be a partner on your local disaster plan. Talk to your jurisdiction about tabletop exercises and efforts that you and the disability community can be involved in to help make sure, right, that we're doing everything we can to prepare and do whole person planning and response. Alerting is so important. I live in the foothills of the Sierra Nevada mountain range, very rugged, rural area. We have a lot of fires. It's probably our number one disaster here. We do get heat waves. And in California, besides just my area, right, it was an interesting time over this last year when we had, what was it, Vance, a heat wave, a hurricane, and power outages, all in the
Earthquake.
And an earthquake, yes.
right.
So this becomes so important. The alerting piece literally, I think, is one of the most important advances in helping people with their preparedness. And of course, with the jurisdictions, right, organization around response. So have the conversations, talk to them. This isn't a one size fits all, it never is. This is just a new tool that's available that Cal OES is making available to local jurisdictions. But engage, have the conversations, figure out what's going to work best for your community, or what, compilation of different alerting and notification systems might work best. In my area, like I mentioned, it's very rural. We have a lot of wildfires. And it's a combination right now between alerting and Zone Haven, which is a whole other piece that helps you, the community organize evacuation areas by areas as part of the notification and alert system, and they kind of intertwine. So talk to them, see what they're using, engage, bring your expertise as people with lived experience or past experience with working within this community and alerting and whole person response. And, that's how we're going to make it better and work and safer, and be able to respond better. So with that, thank you, Jim.
Thanks, Anna. Yeah, a new tool, work in progress. And we as advocates have a role to ensure the very best communication access for the broadest number of people. Naya, a reminder to you to put our poll up in about 5 minutes. There is a question in chat from Sheila. Is Smart 911 app also available, Noah, on Android? Is it accessible and has it been tested for accessibility and 508 compliance?
Yes to all of those questions. iPhone and Android, we do test extensively for 508 compliance and work with various partners to ensure accessibility.
Okay, great. That was easy.
Yeah, it's not easy to do, but it was an easy answer.
Okay. Other questions that you see in chat that I may have missed that you want to address?
I mean, it's a fairly specific one that Lisa Austin is posing regarding the benefit of Smart 911, perhaps in a home care environment. Should the care provider be the one experiencing the medical emergency? And I'm certainly biased. I've worked with Rave for over 12 years now. I cannot think of many scenarios where having a Smart 911 profile doesn't make sense. We've had all kinds of what we call smart saves, kind of playing off of Smart 911. Ways that 911 and first responders have leveraged information provided by a 911 caller that we would have never envisioned when we first developed the product. So I would say, unless there is just a general uneasiness about creating a Smart 911 profile, I would always encourage people to have one. The information is as secure as anything can be that's out there. You do have the ability to share only the information that you want to make available. It's only available during a 911 call. People can't just go rifling through the data. So again, all biases aside, I think having a Smart 911 profile is extremely valuable, and it has saved many, many lives.
Okay, I wanted to go back to, I'm kind of trying and be alert to any terms we use that people may not be familiar with, like Terra. But Anna, Zone Haven, I've heard that term used several times now in different webinars, but I'm still not clear what it is, either Vance or Anna. Could you give us a real brief definition of what it is and what we need to be aware of and how it fits into this discussion?
Yeah, I'll just start if you want, Vance. And, Zone Haven is a tool that local emergency managers may use. It's not universal. It's not throughout the entire state. It's only in certain communities. But it basically breaks up a community, a county, a community and neighborhood into various zones. And those zones are named, they're given a number. So when they go to evacuate, or they want to provide a warning to a particular area or evacuation a certain area, they're able to message your zone is under a warning, or your zone needs to evacuate immediately. So it's just another tool to try to get the community to understand where they live, what zone they're in. And so if a disaster occurs and they hear that number, they know that they're included in that warning or order.
Yeah, you crushed it. Good job.
So, there are Herman and Sheila from the partnership put up a number of questions in chat. Maybe Noah, Vance, you can glance at them. How often does a contract renew? Will there be a site that lists which jurisdiction have signed on? Will communications be in languages other than English?
Yes, this is Noah. I was starting to type a response. I'm also going to put my email address into chat, June, if that's okay, just in case people have more detailed questions that we don't get to here.
Good.
So I started typing. There's a lot to unpack in this question. However, let me try to answer the easier ones to answer. So it's a multi-year contract where we're a couple of years in. There's probably another 4 years on the alerting contract, but again, the funding source is, let's call it indefinite. And the funding source that is actually outlives the contract duration. The way that Cal OES embarks on these long-term engagements is that they actually expect, this sounds odd, but they actually expect the contract to expire once deployment, in this case of these 911 core services, once deployment and implementation is complete, they actually allow the contract to sunset, but the services and the budget required to maintain the services that have been implemented survive beyond the end of the contract. That's even a difficult concept for me to get my head around. So I wouldn't think so much or be concerned as much with when the contract renews, because Cal OES, to my knowledge, has no plan to rebid the contract for this particular body of work. It's embedded in something much larger than just alert and warning. We didn't talk about I didn't talk about all of the translation capabilities that are native within Rave Alert. But our platform provides automatic translations into dozens of languages. Through Microsoft Translate, we always recommend that native speakers put eyes on and review automatically translated content, but that capability exists in our platform for SMS text, email, and even voice alerts. So that capability is in there. Can people add additional needs for EM? So redundancies for, I think, like disruptions in infrastructure is the way I'm reading this question. Alert and warning requires some level of connectivity. I think we saw many years ago during the devastating wildfires up in Sonoma County that cell phone towers were directly impacted, and I'm sure that's not the only wildfire where that's occurred. It sounds like that occurred in Maui as well. If certain infrastructure is impacted, it could limit or significantly impact the ability to deliver and receive messages. But Rave Alert is what's known as a multimodal notification tool. So there are multiple communications channels that we connect with. But the last mile of delivery, so to speak, certainly isn't owned by Rave or Motorola. So we do depend on third parties for that last mile of message delivery, if that makes sense.
But just a reminder, Noah, before we have to shut things down, you're going to put your email in chat. And
I am right now.
And thank you all for doing the poll. You just have a minute or two left. If you want to add your input, we appreciate it. I want to thank everyone for their good questions and participation, and Vance, Anna, and Noah for a very robust overview of new features that we know are work in progress, but hope will really make a difference in people's lives, not only in their planning, but in their own personal response and recovery. So thank you all for a very robust discussion. And any questions, you know how to find Vance?
Yeah. Thank you, June, and thank you for the opportunity. we're working hard to be inclusive and to integrate community feedback and needs throughout this process. Appreciate everybody's partnership and the collaborative approach. This will continue to get better. So we're proud of where we're going and delighted to get where we need to be.
Okay, well, that concludes our last policy and practice discussion for this disaster coalition. I guess that the panel remain online for a minute or two, a few minutes afterward, but thanks again to the rest of you and stay safe.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
everyone.